Welcome to Wire Girls. The tutorial that I'm going to be showing you is, well, I call it a family tree, and it's like a stylized tree pendant, and then you can add little dangles of birthstone colours. Now to make it, you're going to need 3 pieces of 1mm or 18 gauge round wire, quite a bit of 0.4 or 26 gauge round wire, some birthstone coloured beads or little birthstones, and a little bit of extra wire to add the beads to make dangles, probably 0.8, something like that. These are the colours, so you can pause on that if you need to reference what colours you need for birthstones. This is one of my trees. This is quite an ornate one. This one has been made for a grandmother, so I need to have an awful lot of places to hang beads from. Also, I've balled the ends using the balling technique that I have in the skill set section, and I'm going to use 3 pieces of wire. Now for this demonstration I'm not actually going to ball the ends. If you wish to ball the ends, that's absolutely fine. If not, you don't have to. So I've got 3 shortish pieces of 1mm wire. I'm just giving them a bit of a rub because they're a little bit grubby. Also, it will help firm the wires slightly. Now they're not all exactly the same length. It is after all meant to be a tree, which is sort of a natural thing, but they're about 5.5-ish inch each. That's probably about 12 or 13 centimetres. But it depends how big you want your tree to be. Now the best way I've found of doing this is if you can just very, very loosely, I remember I can't draw, so a little sort of, it's almost like a T shape, but it's going to be our tree. So I've just done that with 3 lines. So that basically is your tree. This you can then use as a guide for size. I'm going to take the end wires and I'm going to curl the end wires over. That one will probably make the loop that the chain will go through on that side. This one will come down and provide a loop there for a bead to go on if you needed. The only time really I have to think about how many loops and things I put on is if it's going to be for a grandma and you're going to need several, although it could be that you've got a lot of children or you're making it for somebody with a lot of children, and then you're going to need a lot of loops. But you can use the wires to get loops just about anywhere you want, and you can always add a few more in later on to get some more. So that wire will be going across the top, and these 2 wires are going to form sort of the stem, and then they're going to come outwards to go underneath that top bit, which is our branch. It's quite a basic, simple thing to follow. I've got some round nose pliers here, and I'm going to use the round nose just to grip this. If it's 5-inch overall, I'm gripping it about 3-inch, so it's about 2/3, just over half. And I'm going to put a bend in. Now that's going to be quite, I'm using the fattest part of the pliers to get that soft curve, because of course it's a tree, we don't want hard lines, we want soft organic movements with a tree. I need to hold this in my fingers so that there's a gap in between. If there's no gap and it's very tightly together, you can't see your weaving in between, which of course is the beauty of the piece. Oh, now it looks like the cat's been playing with my wire, so I'm just going to undo this. This is the problem of pets. We love them to pieces, but for some reason one of my cats, Loki, does love, come here, reels of silver wire. He likes to bat them round the floor, and this is one of the ones he's had. There we go. Just pass it through there. There has been worse times than that, but anyway. So I've got my weaving, and we don't want these 2 wires too close, because otherwise, like I said, you're not going to be able to see all your hard work. So I'm going to start with the straight one, and I'm going to put my wire on over the top, working away from my wrap around 3 or 4 times. This is to give me a nice strong anchor point. I'm going to put the other wire over the top, and I'll put it fairly close together, oops, at this corner, and then I'm going to go around that way, and then in between the 2 wires and up and around the other wire. Can you see that nice angle I've got? So it's reasonably tight where I'm catching them together, but then it's going to get larger. So around we go, through the middle and around one, if I can get it through the middle there, around once, tuck it in with my thumbnail, and around again, push it in. Now then, get the wire onto the right side so that I'm working the right way around, and I'm just opening that angle up, so I've got it caught together and I've got this nice V coming out, and I'll start working. So around 2 to the other side, it's like a figure of 8, and around 2. It's probably my favourite weave, and if you've seen any other of my weaving tutorials, you will have noticed that I use this one a lot. It's a nice one to get neat. If you're just doing a straight figure of 8 without going around the twice, it has a tendency to get little loose bits along the edge. And the difference to me between it being okay and being absolutely gorgeous is making sure that all your wires are tight. You'll see I'm pushing in with my thumbnail each time. That keeps everything neat and tight. My left hand is holding everything firm so it's not moving, and my right hand is wrapping around twice and pushing in every single time. You don't treat the wire like cotton. Let's just see how far I've got. You see, we're nearly there, but I might want it a bigger than that. It is only a guide as you're drawing. Don't stick to it too slavishly. Let the wire go, you know, where it, just straighten that out where it wants to go. So round twice, keeping it tight. Don't treat the wire like thread. It's not thread. Even though I will say things like we're going to stitch this bead into place and things like that, you can't really treat it like a textile that you can pull and tighten. You want to make sure that it's in the right place when you bend it over the wire, so that it's straight, it goes to the frame wire and it's bent over it rather than pulled over it, and that will make your work a lot neater. Also, one of the big things, let's just see how far we've got. Are we getting there? We are. Let me just get rid of this tail end. Just gonna snip that off as close as I can get. That will go in my scrap pot later, will that? And then using flat pliers, I'll just smooth that in a circular motion down onto that frame wire. There we go. Right, that goes in there. Now, eventually we will start and we'll curve these and make them more, but we're just going to do, let's chop this off. As long as I'm attached, I'm going to leave myself some length because I think I probably want to do a bit more weaving on that side, but I'm going to get the other side in first before I do that. So let me just pop that on there, and I'm just going to curve that following my drawing a little bit. I've pushed my thumb against it and then I've just eased the wire around. Now, if you're not totally happy about doing this with your fingers, you can use something to curve around. These are Wubba's bale pliers, and you've got 2 different sized ovals there, nice big fat oval and a smaller one. But the side of that oval is actually quite a nice soft curve. So if I just come here, that's it, grip that side around the larger plier and just use that to bend on that soft curve, you can see that's a nice curve and it fits quite well. Now I'm going to bend the top wire up slightly, and that's going to go there. So I now need my third wire to come into play. Now instead of using my round nose pliers this time to bend it, I think I'll use something a little bit bigger. Now I've got a little ring display here, and I'm going to use that and bend my wire over it. There we go, giving me a much softer, fatter bend, which will go in there. Remember the trees, they're all meant to be different. They can really wiggle wherever you want, as long as you've got 2 loops at the top for your chain to go through. It really doesn't matter where your chain goes. So I'm just going to move that out of the way, and I'm going to join my wire in by wrapping it around 3 or 4 times, just like I did on the first one. Push that up tight to the other weaving, and then I'm going to bring my curved wire just in there. So this time I'm going to come up through the middle, down around that. The first couple are always the hardest bits to get into place. It's always wobbling a lot more. But one of the things that you need to do is relax your fingers. You may find your hands are you're gripping so hard to make sure that things don't move, that you are work hardening the wire. I just need that to be a bit smaller. It's a little bit too big, so let's just bend it in slightly. There we go, that's better. And then I can wrap round and do my figures of 8. If your hands are too tight and too tense, you will find that what happens is you start dragging on the wire. Your wire will work harden, and then you won't get the soft flowing curves that you need to produce something that looks sort of nice and soft and organic. So try and relax your hands, even if that means putting the work down and stopping and having a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, or even just to put it down and flex your hands slightly, and just remember to relax. Also, a lot of things that people do when they're weaving is they will bring the shoulders up, as if taking them higher, so you're sort of up to your ears. Let's just see how we're going. No, that's going to need a bit more on the bottom there. I'm just going to widen this bottom slightly, because of course we all know that trees sort of have a wider bit at the bottom where the roots split, and I also want that slight curve the other way, so a little wider but with going in a different direction. If you bring your shoulders up as you're working, again it's another sign of sort of tension with the work. Your hands automatically seem to grip tighter, so if you can put it down and drop your shoulders, release your hands, and then pick your work up again, you'll find it easier. It's one of the things I do in class a lot, as I go around and tell people to relax. But obviously, as I can't see what you're doing, but the chances are you're probably tightening up. So I've weaved the same weave of round twice, figure of 8 to the other side, all the way down now my sort of tree trunk. Let's just push that up. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that's looking alright. So I'm just going to wrap that around 2 or 3 times, because basically I'm finishing the wire off there. So I've wrapped around 2 or 3 times, trimmed it off nice and close, and then I'll press it by smoothing it in the same way that it was going, in a circular motion, over the frame wire. Now then, that's the wire that we started with. Just squidge all this together. How are we doing? Let's get rid of that one. Shall I leave it? I might need it. I do a lot of fiddling around. If I'm not totally sure I'm going to that I've finished with a wire, I'll leave it in place, but I'm just going to wrap this round again. It was only wrapped round once, and I think it needs more than once before I trim it off. And then I can smooth that down into the piece. Right, so I've got the other side of my branch left to go. I've got that lovely curve there, but it's not mirrored, so I'm just going to take this top piece up, and I'm rubbing ever so gently. I just want a slight curve and then back, and that should give me sort of a down and back up shape, you know, sort of sinuous. Again, you don't need to stick to the shape. You could do something, you know, entirely different. I'm going to have a gap in the middle. I always end up with a gap in the middle. Obviously it goes three ways, but you can always pop a bead in the middle. Don't know about a blue one, but it was just one that I had handy. But anyway, I'll show you how to do that later on when we've got to the end and I've actually got a proper hole there then that needs covering up. Silver one, yeah, that's a lot better than that blue one. That blue one stuck out like a sore thumb. Right then, okay, so our final bit of weaving. I aren't going to start on the main wire. I'm going to go in on this corner. I've got a little bit of gap, and I'm just going to wrap around there to get me started. Then I'm going to come to the top wire, wrap around that twice, and we'll go back in between. I'm really linking all the three pieces together and making that hole smaller. So I've gone back to where I started, and then I'm going to come up and go to the other wire, go around twice. I'm still doing a figure of 8, but I'm doing it over the 3 wires instead of just the 2. Let's get that coming up now to the top. I'm getting my wires tangled because I've got this long one that I still had left, and then I've got one that's attached to the reel. Make sure they're straight. Oh, I've got a little bit more room, so I can pop that wire through there. It's a little bit like a spider would work, just, you know, working inwards to make its web, and I'm just making a mess. That's what I'm making. Hang on a minute, let me untangle all this. I'm making the hole smaller. There we go. Then I'm going to go in between the 2 wires and then onto the top one and wrap around. Like I said, don't worry too much about the hole because we can always pop a bead in there later. So I've gone from the top wire that goes straight across the top now to the wire that we're going to be working on, and I've done my figure of 8 and my 2 wraps, and then I'm coming back. Now the only little tiny worry here is the wires are wider, getting smaller at the moment, and that always makes your weaving want to slip down. So make sure you hold it still with your fingers, and I'm pushing it a little back with a pair of pliers. So I've speeded this up because it's exactly the same weave, and all I'm doing is just wriggling the wires, making them into a better shape, and weaving the same around twice, back through the middle, up and around the top wire twice, back through the middle, down and around the other wire. And I'm going to keep going until I've got the second half of my sort of main tree branch. Now, like I said, if you want more branches on your tree, what you would start and do is you would finish this T shape, and then you would add, not too far off what I drew, but like I say, I'm not that bothered if it's perfect. So let me just weave a bit more. Going now. Now then, I want to splay these 2 end wires quite wide. So let's just give that a nice gentle curve, and the same with the top one, and I've gone out really quite wide, and I'm going to do some weaving now between that width. This will do 2 things. As you can see, it's going to hold that back, but not only is it going to hold that back because the wires are splayed out so it can't move, but it's going to showcase your weaving a little bit more. The wider the frame wires, the more that the weaving in between shows up. So when we do a splay on the end, it stops the weaving that we've already done slipping, but by bringing those 2 wires apart, we get this lovely area that you can see your weaving in, which looks so attractive. Just a bit more wire. So So I'm still going round twice, through the middle, pushing in with my finger or my thumb all the time to keep it neat, to keep it tight. See how I just splayed out a little bit there? I mean, I haven't got giddy, you know, I haven't made it absolutely huge. I think I want rid of this wire. It's not big enough to use to actually fasten the bead on with. If I had left a bit more, I could have used it for the bead, but we'll get rid of that. We'll wrap that around and smooth that down with the pliers so that you don't have any little sharp sticky up bits, because it's really not comfortable to wear if you've got something on that's scratching. Now I've moved to the other side. Now let's have a look at you. And I'm going to do the same thing. I am widening those wires straight out to hold the weaving on the inside of it in place, and just to give a wider area to make sure that everybody can see that lovely weaving that we're doing. So around twice, figure of 8 to the other side and around. There we go. There. It's beginning to firm up now as well. Before, when we started, it was kind of wobbly, but now it's just trim that piece off, we don't need that. Now then, we've got our weaving just about finished. So these wires here are going to be the wires that we're going to add our chain to. So I'm going to, where's my round nose pliers gone? There we go. Just grip at the end of the weaving. Sorry, my hand's gone out of shot. I'll bring it back in a minute, honest. It's because I couldn't see with the camera in the way. There we go. And I've just taken that and I'm bending the wire around the pliers so that I've formed a loop going upwards. Move my little wires, and I'm going to bring that back down so it's sort of parallel with the top of the tree. There we go. Then I'm going to use this weaving wire to fasten the whole thing together. So that wire that's come back is going to be fastened into place so that it's nice and secure. There's nothing worse than having loose wires. You really can't do with them. So I'm just wrapping it around there, and then I'm going to go in through the weaving. I need to find a little hole. Go on. If you can't find a little hole, you can make one by just spreading the wire slightly with your fingers. There we go. We'll get that through there, and then wrap around and around again. Make sure that's tight. It's often easier to push with the pliers than push with your fingers. Now then, where shall I go with this? They're never too planned, you know, it's just a case of, what shall I do with you? We'll wrap that in a bit more, so in between the weaving, if I can find a hole. There we go, and sort of stitch it into place. Go back around the wire again. Now then, give myself some room so that I can wrap around it. All we're thinking of doing at this point is creating a loop for our chain to fasten into. However, like I said before, if you're doing one that needs many loops, you could use this wire to drop down over this top branch and create another loop. All I'm doing is wrapping around several times. Press those down. So I could come over the top and drop down, so over in a circle and down like that. So it's nice and firm and the wire's coming down, and then I can turn the end into a little tiny curl. Now if this was bald at the end, you know, if I'd used a torch and made it bald, I would make a curl above that point. So that's one there, and that can be caught with another piece of wire just there to hold it. It's not quite round, I don't like that. Let's just bend it back a bit. How does that look? Better. Flatten it down. Move that to where I want it to be. Yeah, that's better. Okay, what should we do with this wire? Let's curl it around underneath. That's a nice curve. I'm going to put a curl in the end. Let's just curl it back a bit first. That's better. So it's going to sort of fit into that shape underneath the branch. This is why they all turn out different, because of course every single one I do, I end up bending the wire slightly differently, and I've got a little curl on the end of that one. Now let's get rid of this wire. So I'm going to trim that off as close as it'll go and press it down. Come here. There we go. Make sure there's no sharp bit. Okay, so the bottom one. Let's take the right hand side and I'm going to bend it upwards and across the trunk, and then I'm going to bend that wire all the way around and just tuck that in. It's just long enough to do that. I'm not going to have to trim it, I don't think. No, just flatten that down. Again, if that had been bold, it would have given a nice finish on the end, but really it doesn't make that much difference. So that's that wire out of the way, and it's given me a cute little loop in case I needed it. Let's have a look at the other side. I don't like them to be symmetrical. Let's just bend you up. So I've got a loop there to hang a bead on. So I've got like what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 there, 5, 1 at the bottom. And let's just shape it back around so it's shaping in, and then if I put a loop on the bottom of that, that will give me another hanging area in case I need it. I will apologise for my orangey thumbnail. I've been using platinum. Right, let's bring that back up over the top. Where shall I put you? I don't care really if it matches, but the other one sticks out quite a bit more, so I'm just going to ease that with my pliers so that it's a little bit further back, and then bend it round. Just gives me a bit more sticky out bit. There we go. And where shall we put you? Let's bend you up so you're flat with the top. There we go. You'll know when something's right or something's wrong. You'll do a curl and you'll put it into place and you'll think, you know what, it doesn't look quite right. Often in that case, I will suggest that you move on to a different piece of wire and do the other piece of wire first. Then come back to the one that you thought wasn't right. I'm just trimming this end off. Because sometimes when you do something else on the piece, it can balance off what you've already done and make it look okay. And then you're not overstressing the wire. You get the best curves when you only curve the metal once. So they're a bit wobbly. What have I got there? Let's just bend that a little bit more. See, I just go round and round and round and round in circles. I'm going to do this other bottom one. I'm just going to put a curl in there. And curl that round into that loop made by the other side. Doesn't have to be super tight. Again, we're giving the idea of sort of roots, that sort of thing. It's all stylized. So I'm just pushing that round. So I've got like a loose bit, and then I'm going to tighten that very end bit. Around you go. We'll tighten that down. And just trim off tiny end bit and press that into place. There. Oh, I quite like the look of that. Yeah, it's nice. What should I do with that top bit? As long as I have a curl for my chain to go into, it doesn't really mean. Yeah, I'll pop it in the end of there. That will look quite nice. Just bend that end bit through and wrap it around there. This is why I leave things alone, go away, do another wide, come back to it, because then it's often will make sense. And if it doesn't, I'll just put the whole thing down and I'll go and have a cup of coffee and I'll come back and look at it. Just press that down tight. Now, my basic framework is done. However, I have a couple of wires here that are really, let's just clear up, not very secure. So I'm now going to use fine wire and I'm going to start and make all this tighter. So I'm going to go through there and I am going to wrap that little tiny loop. I'm just wrapping around it a couple of times so I've got it tight. And then I'm going to attach it to come here. This one. It will hold the top one down and in place. It will hold the bottom one up and in place. Because the last thing you want is things that might catch. And then I'm just wrapping round 3 or 4 times. Does it need anything else? The top piece of wire could go through there. Yeah, let's just going to pop that through the weaving. Every time you connect a piece of weaving, one piece to another, it will strengthen your piece. If you can connect so it doesn't really show that much, that's brilliant, because you're getting the strength without the messiness isn't really the right word, but the difference in wires moving this way and that way can confuse the eye, especially when you've got a beautiful smooth weave and then you've suddenly got an odd wire going across it. But if you can get it to all fit in but be connected and interconnected, you'll have a much stronger piece of jewellery. So I've got that through there. I've wrapped around this one that's dangling. Let's see how strong that is. This is 1mm wire, so it is reasonably strong. Now I could push it right up there and then I can just attach that curve into that part of the tree there, which will make that stronger. In you go. There we are. And back and around. Then I can wrap around a couple of times and then trim that end off and smooth down with the pliers. Now that side now is really secure. There we go. Let's just bend that back slightly so that it's at a better angle for hanging something from it. So I'm just going to curve it. There we go. Lovely. Now let's look at that other side. How wobbly is this? That's pretty wobbly. So let's take another piece of fine wire. I'm going to go through there. So I'm going through the trunk of the tree, and then I'm going to wrap this into that loop that I made, if it doesn't just drop straight out like it is doing, and pull that down, and then back into the loop. It's only really one piece of wire that's attaching it. It's only one go around. You don't need to do loads and loads and loads. It's amazing how little wire you need to actually hold something in place. And obviously the less you can use, the less heavy or cumbersome or, you know, lumpy it will be. So I'm just going to trim that there and then press that little end into that loop. So let's just look at the other side. This is the bit that went into the trunk, and I'm just pulling that up and I'm wrapping that round into the other side of the circle, so that finishes off. And I will probably again wrap that round 3 or 4 times just to hold everything in place. The shorter the piece of wire, I find it easier to manipulate it if I actually use the pliers instead of my fingers. If it's a long piece, I can use my fingers quite easily. Right, so that's that one anchored there. The other ones have all been done on the other side. We're all flattened down. That's it. That's our tree just about finished. Now we need the dangles. The small beads that are going to make this one just like something pretty. Now if you want to do just an organic tree, you can wrap something organic looking like labradorite beads or dangle those all over it and it looks great. But really the big thing that makes people like these is the fact that we put the little beads on that make them into birthstones. So I'm just making a little dangle. You all know how to make dangles. I've put a loop in the end of my wire. I got maybe 2.5 inches of wire. This is 0.8. Threading a tiny little sapphire coloured bead on. Sapphire is for September. Making a loop, go past, don't fasten it yet because you need to add it to your tree. And add it on there. Wriggle it till it goes through. Put my round nose pliers across the loop, hold all that in my non-dominant hand, and then using, bit of fluff, my snipe, I can then wrap the wire around neatly. So I'm getting it really close next to each other. I'm wrapping round the stem of the wire and bringing it down to the bead. Again, if you wanted to use the balling technique with your torch, a balled end on this rather than that little loop in the end would look great. Or if you have some pre-made head pins, you can use those. You can get some very pretty ones with little stones on the end now. And that gives you your first dangle. Now I'm going to add another couple of dangles to this tree, but I'm going to speed the film up because it's really just me doing the same thing again. So I'm adding another loop, a stick, and the bead I'm adding this time is an emerald green one. Emerald is for May, I think. Like I say, I put the list on the front of the tutorial so that you can tell. Now if you're feeling very adventurous, instead of doing these with birthstones, you can actually do these with the initials of the children made out of pieces of wire. And we are going to be doing a tutorial probably in the spring, where I'm going to go through how to make the actual letters that you can then add, if you need to, onto the tree. But I've got a ruby coloured bead, a sapphire coloured bead and an emerald coloured bead for 3 different birthstones, and I've added those to my tree. So they're all individual to whoever's you're giving them to, or to whoever you're buying them, but I've still got that hole in the middle of the tree which I'm not happy with. Now I have got a little tiny frosted silver bead which I'm just going to pop into the middle there. If you wanted, you could make a feature of that and make that the mother's birthstone. So you've got sort of the mother's birthstone in the heart of the tree, and then you've got the children's birthstones hanging from the branches. Or I suppose you could even put 2, and you could put mum and dad's in there and make it like a feature. That's entirely up to you. These things are extremely popular. People love the fact that they're personalised to them. So I've just got another piece of wire, and I am just wiring that little tiny silver bead over the top of that hole that I had in the middle, and I'm just going to wrap that around a couple of times to go through. Now when you've finished the tree, you can add either a chain to the loops, or you can actually make your own chain using the colours that we've already put into the tree, using the birthstone things to make it really, really unique. So there we are, from a funny little drawing to a lot of weaving and a few pretty Swarovski beads. You have got a little family tree, personal to whoever's getting it, because the kids, loops on the end, more loops there available if you needed them. You could probably get another 3 or 4 dangles on there if you needed, but very pretty. So whether you've done one like that, which I got carried away with the balling on the end, or whether you've done one like this with no balling on the end and added your dangles. But I really hope you enjoyed it, my little family tree. Thank you very much for watching. Happy wrapping.